it is. So hopefully we are back and I'm picking back up on the recording. This is Rosicrucianism. So let's see if that is playing now. Looks like it is. Yeah, looks like it should be actually. Yeah, okay. So if you want to watch it on YouTube, it's back up on YouTube for anybody that's looking for that. And because this is a new video, I'll go ahead and say make sure to hit the like, share this link, subscribe, click the bell to get all the notifications. This is part of our Discord show tonight. The Discord link is in the description box. Come join us on Discord. You're more than welcome to engage. We're also going to be talking about sexual trauma after we get off the path of initiation into Rosicrucianism. Yeah, I am trying to raise funds right now, so please donate. Like I said, my oldest son's birthday's coming up. I need to raise money to get him something really nice, as well as I'm trying to make a move and start a new business endeavor. And we haven't reached the monthly goal. So please donate and support and come join us over on Discord. So back to it. Now, occultists also point out that many of the works of William Shakespeare, such as the music dramas of Wagner, Goethe's Faust, and Dante's Divine Comedy of Camoens' Espic Luciades, and a few other books of comparable rank, are designed for esoteric as well as exoteric reading. In Shakespeare's work, specific signatures cryptically conveyed are also presented. In Love's Labors, Lost, a whole scene is devoted to revealing an ingenious way to those possessing the keys. The Rosicrucian connection. The scene closes with a remark addressed to Goodman Dull, a representative of the unperceiving multitude, that during the entire scene he has not spoken a word. No, comes his response, nor understood, none neither. Right? And I just want to say that the possessing the keys, right? These are the keys, higher and lower, greater and lesser keys, right? Of the higher and lower self, or the higher and carnal man. Okay, and one day we will get into the keys of Solomon and all of that again. I've done videos on it in the past. If one abstracts, and these are the manifestos here, if one abstracts from the symbolic associations of the rose and the cross, which have been visioned by many since ancient epochs, it is known that 3 treatises or manifestos which gave rise to the movement were published in the German language between 1614 and 16. Fama Furtinitis, Confessio Furtinitis, and Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz. About 400 manuscripts and books were published which discussed the Rosicrucian documents. The peak of the so-called Rosicrucian furor was reached when 2 mysterious posters appeared in the walls of Paris, 1622 within few days from each other. The first one started with the saying, "We, the deputies of the higher college of the Rosicrucians, do make our stay visibly and invisibly in this city," and the second one ended with the words, "The thoughts attached to the real desire of the seeker will lead us to him and him to us." And that is powerful as fuck, son. We, the deputies of the higher college of the Rosicrucians, do make our stay visibly and invisibly in this city, this temple, this higher city of the heavens, the temple of the heavenly courts. We are in there, in this city, in this dwelling, in this place, both seen and unseen. The thoughts attached to the real desire of the seeker will lead him to us and us to him. If he is of that frequency or that vibration, he will be attracted to us and us to him. He will be brought into the mysteries, and the mysteries will be brought to him. By putting himself in the path of alignment towards said mysteries, or towards said illumination, he will become illuminated. The following lines can be found in the Muses, Threnody by H. Adamson, Perth, 1638. For what we do presage is riot and gross, for what we are as brethren of the rosy cross. We have the mason word and second sight, things for to come, for we can foretell all right. We have the word and the second sight, the power of prophecy. We have psychic abilities, extrasensory perception. We're able to perceive what others cannot perceive, see what others cannot see, know what others cannot know, because it is an inner knowing that is unlocked through the process of illumination. The Rosicrucians took the union of the rose and the cross for their symbol because the union embodies a meaning of their effort and emphasizes the fact that the effort must be made by all men, as the aim of humanity on earth is to attain divine wisdom. Only two ways lead to this divine wisdom: knowledge and love. By the rose blooming in the middle of the cross, the whole meaning of the universe is explained. In order to realize its possibilities and become perfect, mankind must develop the capacity for love to the point of loving all creatures in all forms perceptible to the senses. That means loving everything, even what is considered to be evil, even what is considered to be your enemies, even what is considered to be people that have harmed you and wronged you. Loving all things, including the imperfect or what is perceived to be the imperfect. Being okay with the nature of reality and the nature of existence in itself. Being okay with oneself and all things that exist. It must enlarge the capacity for knowledge and understanding to the point of comprehending the laws that govern the worlds, and of being able to proceed through intuition and loving intelligence of the heart from every effect to every cause. Understanding those laws of momentum, of energy, right? Those sacred sciences of the metaphysics and alchemy and how everything works in the construct and how we can utilize that within ourselves and how that works within ourselves. Modern groups. During the late and 19th and earliest 20th century, various groups styled themselves Rosicrucian. Almost all claimed to be authentic heirs to a historical Rosicrucian tradition. These include the ancient mystical order of Rosicrucis, the Confraternity of the Rose Cross, Fraternitas Rosicrucis, the Rosicrucian Fellowship, the Rosicrucian Order of Crotona Fellowship, Societas Rosicruciana, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Societas Rosicruciana in Anglina, and others as well. And the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is one where you'll find a lot of very good modern information if you want to study Rosicrucianism and the alchemy of the gold, right, and the Philosopher's Stone. Esoteric Christianity groups versus Paramasonic groups. These diverse groups can be divided into two categories: the Paramasonic groups and the Esoteric Christianity groups. There have never been any connection between these two streams. Paramasonic groups may be defined as being late heirs of the alchemy of Hermetic knowledge created by the original 15th or 17th century College of Invisibles. The inner structure of these groups is based upon Masonic lines such as grades, initiations, and titles. The esoteric Christianity groups regard themselves as representing a rebirth in the new world of the inner worlds as described by the original Rosicrucian order. Their mission is to prepare the whole world for a new phase in religion during the next 6 centuries toward the age of Aquarius. It's taking place right now. That new world order is a divine order, a one world order through source, through a stream of source consciousness that connects all men and women. That Aquarian age, right? Carrying that pail of water, the mastering of the waters, the mastering of the air, using technology and understanding the social memory complex that makes up the conscious bulk of humanity, and how a collective consciousness mind works and how we work as individuals and on the collective level. Okay, the College of Invisibles is those courts of heaven, right? It is the hidden hand. Those that are able to tap into the highest of frequencies and communicate in telepathic ways. Moving forward here. And this is, and we're going to see how much of this we can actually get into, but this is the actual book here. Everybody hit thumbs up in the chat. The Philosophical Research Society. Let's see. This is a handbook for Rosicrucianism. The Fame and Confession of the Fraternity of the Rosy Cross. It's kind of shitty looking, so hopefully it doesn't look that shitty all the way down, or we might have to pull up a new book. Okay. Here we go. There we go. The publisher to the reader. This is the observation of such as skills dreams, that to travel in our sleep a long way and all alone is a sign of death. That it seems the poet knew, for when the queen of the Carthage was to die for love, he fits her with melancholy Viphion. And notice the spelling, right? The feign of death, the themes of the poet, and die, D-Y-E, for love, right? The changing of one's hue. Longum incomatata vitur arriviam. Now the oof I make of it is this. I would be low wife, as prognificate. I do therefore promise my preferent work, not only life, but acceptance. For in this to my dream, and I know you will call it foe, I travel not without company. He's talking about consciously. There were some gentlemen, besides myself, who affected this fame, and thought it no different peregrine to their own. But it was their pleasure it should receive light at my hands. At this made them defer their own copies, which, after wife had passed to the press, I have read, reader, but little more to say, unless I tell thee of my justice. And now thou shalt see the distributive it is. The translation of the Fama belongs to an unknown hand, but the abilities of the translator I question not. He hath indeed mistaken Damascus for Damcar in Arabia. And remember, if we look back at the Necronomicon, in a lot of the mystery teachings, it goes back to the Mad Arab and the Ishmaelites and Ishmaelism, right? The fifth column. And this I would not alter, for I am no pedant to correct another man's labors. The copy was communicated to me by a gentleman more learned than myself. And I should name him here, but that he expects not either thy thanks or mine. As for the preface, it is my own, and I with thee the full benefit of it, which certainly thou canst not commit, and that come to with it clear eyes and a purged spirit. Confide that prejudice obstructs thy judgment, for if this affections are engaged, thou to ignis fatuus that do not think it a guide. Became thou do follow it. It is not opinion that makes things false or true, for men have denied a great part of the world which they inhabit. In America, as well as philosopher Stone, was sometimes in the predicament of impossibilities. There is nothing more absurd than to be of the same mind with the generality of men, for they have entertained many gross errors, which time and experience have confuted. It is indeed our sluggishness and incredulity that hinder all discoveries, for men contribute nothing towards them but their contempt, or, which is worth, their malice. I have known them all this myself, and therefore I tell it thee. But what if thou wilt make of this? I know not. To make thee what man should be, it is not in my power, but it is much in thy own. If thou knowest thy duty to thyself, think of it, and farewell. If you know the duty to yourself, think of it, and farewell. Wife and understanding reader. Wisdom, faith Solomon, to a man an infinite treasure. For she is the breath of the power of God, and a pure influence that floweth from the glory of the Almighty. She is the brightness of eternal light, and an undefiled mirror of the majesty of God, and an image of his goodness. She teaches us soberness and prudence. The epistle. Prudence, righteousness, and strength. He understands the subtlety of words, solution of dark sentences, the foreknoweth signs and wonders, and what shall happen in time to come. With this treasure was our first father, Adam, fully endued. Hence it doth appear that after God had brought before him all the creatures of the field and the fowls under heaven, he gave to every one of them their proper names according to their nature. Although now through the sorrowful fall into this excellent jewel, wisdom has been lost, and mere darkness and ignorance is come into the world, yet notwithstanding hath the Lord God sometimes hitherto bestowed and made manifest the same to some of his friends. For the wife King Solomon doth defile himself, that he on earnest prayer and desire did get and obtain such wisdom of God, that thereby he knew how the world was created. Thereby he understood the nature of the elements, also the time, beginning, middle, and end, the increase and decrease, the change of times through the whole year, the revolution of the year, and the ordinance of the stars. He understood also the properties of the tame and wild beast, the cause of the reigning of the winds, and minds and intents of men, all sorts and natures of plants, virtues of roots, and others, was not unknown to him. Now I do not think that there can be found anyone who would not with and desire with all his heart to be a partaker of this noble treasure. But seeing this same felicity can happen to none except God himself give wisdom and send his Holy Spirit from above, we have therefore set forth in print this little treatise, to wit, Phantom of Confession of the laudable fraternity of the Rosy Croix, to be read by everyone, because in them is clearly shown and discovered what concerning it the world hath to expect. Although these things may seem somewhat strange, and may esteem it to be but a philosophical shew, and no true history which is published and spoken of the fraternity of the Rosy Croix, it shall be sufficiently appear by our confession that there is more in recess than may be imagined, and it shall be easily understood and observed by everyone, if he be not altogether void of understanding, what nowadays and at their times is meant thereby. Those who are true disciples of wisdom and true followers of the spherical art will confide better of these things and have them in greater estimation, as also judge, for otherwise of them it hath been done by the principal Profans, also especially of Adam Hafelmeyer, notarius publicus to the Archduke Maximilian, who likewise hath made an extract of Ex Scriptis Theologicus Theoprosti, and written a treatise under the tide of the Besuter, wherein he willeth that every Christian should be a true Jesuit, that is, to walk, live, be, and remain in Jesus. He was but ill rewarded of the Jesuits because of his answer written upon the Famine. He did not those of the fraternity of the Rosy Croix, the highly illuminated men and undeceiving Jesuits, for they not able to brook this, laid hands on him and put him into the clears, for which they likewise have to expect their reward. Blessed Aurora will now henceforth begin to appear, who after the passing away of the dark night of Saturn, with the brightness altogether extinguished the shining of the moon, of the small sparks of heavenly wisdom which yet remaineth with men, and is a forerunner of pleasant Phoebus, who with his clear and fiery glinting beams bring forth that blessed day, long wished for, and many true-hearted, by which daylight then fall shall truly be known, and shall be seen all heavenly treasures of godly wisdom, and all also the secrets of all hidden and invisible things to the world, according to the doctrine of our forefathers and ancient wise men. This will be the right kingly ruby and most excellent shining carbuncle, of which it is laid, that doth shine and giveth light in darkness, and to be a perfect medicine of all imperfect bodies. and to change them into the best gold, and to cure all diseases of men, easing them of all pains and miseries. Be therefore gentle, reader, admonished that with me you do earnestly pray to God that it please him to open the hearts and ears of all ill-hearing people, and to grant unto them this blessing, that they may be also to know him in his omnipotency, with admiring contemplation of nature to his honor and praise, and to the love, help, comfort, and strengthening of our neighbors, and to the restoring of the diseased. And that's what I'm saying. This is humanism. This is about trying to raise consciousness to a higher degree. That way it can change the world and change the way that humanity perceives consciousness, and change the way that we experience consciousness and experience spiritual wisdom, and are able to understand and perceive the world around us. Now, I want to go back to chapter 23, the study guide of the OTO, which is where we left off in the last private show. And we are going to look at a symbolic journey. Corinth, the city, was situated on the isthmus between the Greek mainland and Peloponnesos, and had two seaports and trade and wealthy merchants, made by the most insidious city in all of Greece. It was a favorite resort of courtesans, and over 1,000 sacred female slaves were kept in the temple of Aphrodite for the use of strangers. Symbolically, it can be equated to Yesod, the sphere of the moon, and Malkuth, the sphere of the earth. Athens was known for its learning and government, its brilliant orators, its architecture and ordered way of life. The intellectual pursuits of Athens can be symbolically equated with the sphere of Hod, ruled by Mercury on the tree of life. Mytilene was situated on the islands of Lesbos, from which comes the term lesbian. Sappho was born and lived there, became one of the greatest of Greek female poets. Some of her poetry still exists today, and was well liked by Crowley. Sappho's song of love, which went far beyond human love, and the legend goes that she threw herself into sea for the love of the sun god. The city can be symbolic of the spirit of Nisak, or Venus, the planet of love, whose symbol encompasses the whole tree of life. Heliopolis was the Greek name for the Egyptian city called On by the Egyptians in ancient times. This was a major headquarters for the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was known for its worship of the sun. Solon, Plato, Thales, and Greek isles were reputed to have learned from these priests. The city represents the Tifereth. On the enclosed map of the distances from Greek to Egypt were great. Journey B.C. was fraught with peril, and great many pirates roamed the Mediterranean Sea, and if one was caught, one could be killed or more likely sold into slavery. Peril on land was almost as bad. But then, in a symbolic way, are you selling your own self into slavery by indulging in the lower passions? Are you becoming addicted to anything which might interfere with your true will? Or are you going to win through with the help of occult knowledge in the city of the sun, Tifereth? This is the map of the ancient Near East. Message of the Master Therion. Liber 2. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. The word of the law is thelema. Thelema means will. The key to this message is the word will. The first obvious meaning of the law is conformed by the antithesis. The word of sin is restriction. Again, thou hast no right but to do thy will. Do that, and no other shall say nay. For pure will, unassuaged of purpose, delivered from the lust of result, is every way perfect. Take this carefully. It seems to imply a theory that if every man and every woman did his and her will, the true will, there would be no clashing. Every man and every woman is a star, and each star moves in an appointed path without interference. There is plenty of room for all. It is only disorder that creates confusion. From these considerations, it should be clear that do what thou will does not mean do what you like. It is a theosis of freedom, but it is also the strictest possible bond. Do what thou wilt, then do nothing else. Let nothing deflect thee from the austere and holy task. Liberty is absolute to do thy will, but to seek to do any other thing whatever, and instantly obstacles must arise. Every act that is not in definite course of that one orbit is erratic and hindrance. Will must not be two, but one. Note further that this will is not only to be pure, that is, single, as explained above, but also unassuaged of purpose. This strange phrase must give us pause. It may mean that any purpose in the will would damp it. Clearly, the lust of result is a thing from which it must be delivered. But the phrase may also be interpreted as if read with purpose unassuaged, i.e. with tired energy. The conception is therefore an eternal motion, infinite and unalterable. It is nirvana, only dynamic instead of static. And this comes to the same thing in the end, right? And do it with purpose unassuaged. And it's saying to not have an end result in mind, right? The obvious practical task of the magician is then to discover what his will really is, so that he may do it in this manner. And he can best accomplish this by the practices of Liber Bisharb, see Equinox 1:7-105, or such others as may be from one time to another be appointed. It should now be perfectly simple for everybody to understand the message of Master Therion. Thou must, 1. Find out what is thy will. 2. Do that will with A. One-pointedness, B. Detachment, C. Peace. Then, and then only, art thou in harmony with the movement of things, thy will part of, and therefore equal to, the will of God. And since the will is but the dynamic aspect of the self, and since two different selves could not possess identical wills, then if thy will be God's will, thou art that there is but one other word to explain. Elsewhere it is written, surely for our great comfort, love is a law, love under will. This is to be taken as meaning that while will is a law, the nature of that will is love. But this love is a byproduct of that will. It does not contradict or supersede that will. And if apparent as it is a byproduct of or a contradiction should arise in any crisis, it is that will that can guide us aright. Lo, while in the book of the law and much love there is no word of sentimentality, hate itself is almost like love. Fighting most certainly is love, as brothers fight Jay. All the many places of the world understand this. The love of the Liber Legis is always bold, viril, even orgiastic. There is a delicacy, but this delicacy of strength, mighty and terrible and glorious as it is, however, it is the penum upon the sacred lance of will, the Damascened inscription upon the swords of the knight monks of the Lima. The law of liberty. And they're saying even fighting, hatred, these are results of love. That's what creates passion, right? Jealousy, envy, right? Protection. Love protects. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. I am often asked why I begin my letters in this way. No matter whether I am writing to my lady or my butcher, always I begin with these 11 words. Why? How else should I begin? What other greetings could be so glad? Look, brother, we are free. Rejoice with me, sister. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. I write this for those who have not read our sacred book, the book of the law, or for those reading it who have somehow failed to understand its perfection. For there are many matters in this book, as the galled tidings are now here, now there, scattered throughout the book, as the stars are scattered throughout the field of night. Rejoice with me, all ye people. At the very head of the book stands the great charter of our Godhead. Every man and every woman is a star. We are all free, all independent, all shining gloriously, each one a radiant world. Is that not good tidings? Then comes the first call of the great goddess Nuit, lady of the starry heaven, who is also matter in its deepest metaphysical sense, who is the infinite in whom we live and move and have our being. Hear her first summon us to men and women. Come forth, O children under the stars, and take your fill of love. I am above you and in you. My ecstasy is in yours. My joy is to see your joy. Later she explains the mystery of sorrow. For I am divided for love's sake, for the chance of union. This is the creation of the world, that the pain of division is as nothing, and the joy of dissolution all. It is shown later how this can be, how death itself is an ecstasy, like love, but more intense, the reunion of the soul with its true self. And what are the conditions of this joy, and peace, and glory? Is ours the gloomy asceticism of the Christian and the Buddhist and the Hindu? Are we walking in eternal fear lest some sin should cut us off from grace? By no means. Be goodly, therefore. Dress ye all in fine apparel. Eat rich foods and drink sweet wines and wines that foam. Also take your fill and will of love, as ye will, when, where, and with whom ye will, but always unto me. This is the only point to bear in mind, that every act must be a ritual, an act of worship, a sacrament. Live as the kings and princes, crowned and uncrowned of this world, have always lived, as masters always live. Let it not be self-indulgence. Make your self-indulgence your religion. When you drink and dance and take delight, you are being immoral. You are not risking your immortal soul. You are fulfilling the precepts of our holy religion, provided only that you remember to regard your actions in this light. Do not lower yourself and destroy and cheapen your pleasure by leaving out the supreme joy, the consciousness of the peace that passeth understanding. Do not embrace mere Marian or Melusine. She is Nuit herself, specially concentrated and incarnated in human form to give you infinite love, to bid you taste even to earth the elixir of immortality. But ecstasy be thine, and joy of earth ever to me, again she speaks. Love is the law, love under will. Keep your highest ideal. Strive ever toward it without allowing aught to stop you or to turn you aside. Even as a star sweeps upon its incalculable and infinite course of glory, and all is love. The law of your being becomes light, life, love, and liberty. All is peace, and all is harmony and beauty. All is joy. For here, how gracious is the goddess. I give unimaginable joys on earth, certainty, not faith, while in life, upon death, peace unutterable, rest, ecstasy. Nor do I demand aught in sacrifice. Is this not better than the death and life of the slaves of the slave gods, as they go oppressed by consciousness of sin, warily seeking or simulating wearisome or tedious virtues? With such, we who have accepted the law of Thelema have nothing to do. We have heard the voice of the star goddess. I love you. I yearn to you. Pale or purple, veiled or voluptuous, I am who all pleasure and purple, and drunkenness in the innermost sense desire you. Put on the wings and arouse the coiled splendor within you. Come unto me. And thus she ends. Sing the rapturous love song unto me. Burn to me perfumes. Wear to me jewels. Drink to me. For I love you. I love you. I am the blue-lidded daughter of the sunset. I am the naked brilliance of the voluptuous night sky. To me, and with these words the manifestation of Nuit is at its end. In the next chapter of our book is given the word Hadit, who is the complement of Nuit. He is an eternal energy, the infinite motion of thing, the central core of all being. The manifested universe comes from the marriage of Nuit and Hadit. Without this could no thing be. The eternal, this perpetual marriage feast is in the nature of things themselves, and therefore everything that is a crystallization of divine ecstasy. Hadit tells us of himself, I am the flame that burns in every heart of man and the core of every star. He is then your own inmost divine self. It is you and not another. Who are lost in the constant rapture of the embraces of infinite beauty, a little further on he speaks of us. We are not for the poor and the sad. The lords of the earth are our kinsfolk. Is God to live in a dog? No, but the highest are of us. They shall rejoice, our chosen, who sorroweth is not of us. Beauty and strength, leaping laughter and delicious languor, force and fire are of us. Later, concerning death, he says, think not, O king, upon that lie, that thou must die. Verily, thou shalt not die, but live. Now let us be understood. If the body of the king dissolve, he shall remain in pure ecstasy forever. When you know what is left but delight, and how we are to live meanwhile, it is a lie, this folly against self. Be strong, O man. Lust. Enjoy all things of sense and rapture. Fear not that any god shall deny these for this. Again and again, in words like these, he sees the expansion and the development of the soul through joy. Here is the calendar of our church. But ye, O my people, rise up and awake. Let the rituals be rightly performed with joy and beauty. Remember that all acts of love and pleasure are rituals, must be rituals. There are rituals of the elements and feast of the times. A feast for the first night of the prophet and his bride. A feast for the 3 days of the writing of the book of the law. A feast for the Tahuti and the child of the prophet, secret, O prophet. A feast for the supreme ritual, and a feast for the equinox of the gods. A feast for fire and a feast for water. A feast for life and greater feast for death. A feast every day in your hearts in the joy of rapture. A feast every night unto new and to the pleasure of the uttermost delight. I feast and rejoice. There is no dread hereafter. There is no disillusion and eternal ecstasy in the kisses of new. It depends on you, your own acceptance of this new law, and you are not asked to believe anything, to accept a string of foolish fables beneath the intellectual level of a bushman and the moral level of a drug fiend. All you have to do is to be yourself, to do your will, and to rejoice. Dost thou fail? Art thou sorry? Is fear in thine heart? He says again. Where I am, these are not. There is much more of the same kind. Enough has been quoted already to make all clear, but there is a further injunction. Wisdom says, be strong. Then canst thou bear more joy. Be not animal, refine thy rapture. If thou drink, drink by the 98 rules of art. If thou love, exceed by delicacy. And if thou do aught joyous, let there be subtlety therein. But exceed, and strive ever to more. And if thou art truly mine, doubt it not. If thou art ever joyous, death is the crown of all. Lift yourselves up, my brothers and sisters of the earth. Put beneath your feet all fears, all qualms, all hesitancies. Lift yourselves up, come forth, free and joyous, by night and day, to do your will. For there is no law beyond do what thou wilt. Lift yourselves up, walk forth with us in light and life and love and liberty, taking our pleasure as kings and queens in heaven and on earth. The sun is arisen, the specter of the ages has been put to flight, the word of sin is restriction, or as it has been otherwise said on this text, that is sin, to hold thine Holy Spirit in thy might, and let no man make thee afraid. Love is the law, love under will. And you know, we speak about these concepts quite often on this channel. You know, the constrictions of sin and the concept of sin and morality. And how one of the hardest things, because of our indoctrination into the system, it is to change our point of view in the way that we perceive sin, the way that we perceive good and evil, the way that we perceive morality. And I speak also a lot about living in passion and joy and desire, to live a true life of fulfillment, one that's driven by your true purpose, by your true you. That's the truest expression of self, is to live according to one's true self, not hindered by the opinions external to oneself or the opinions of society and what people may say or think, but to live according to your true heart and what brings joy, what brings passion, what brings happiness, what brings fulfillment to you. You know, when we love all in. There's no rules or restrictions on the way we love or how we love and who we love. It's that we love. Every gift that we've been given is a creative expression of Creator itself. You know, and the only thing we ever have to be apologetic for is when we have failed to be ourselves. We've done ourselves a disservice to be distrue to ourselves, to hinder ourselves and hold ourselves back and keep ourselves from the greatness from which we all are. We are all a piece of the infinite. A piece of the infinite is still infinite. A piece of Creator is still Creator. A piece of the King is the King. We all have that royal air within us, in our spirits, and we owe our spirits through the experience of life, the greatest experience of life. And you'll find within that experience, as long as it doesn't infringe on the will of others, then you aren't creating bad karma and sin either way. We're going to go down here. Some relaxation exercises. Well, we'll go back here. Let me go down a couple. I got something else I want to read. Right here. Before the beginning of years. From Atlanta and Caledon. Before the beginning of years, there came to the making of man time with a gift of tears, grief with a glass that ran, pleasure with a pain for leaven, summer with leaves that fell, remembrance fallen from heaven, and madness risen from hell, strength without hands to smite, love that endures for a breath, night the shadows of light, and life the shadows of death. The high gods took in hand fire and the falling of tears, and a measure of shifting sand from under the feet of the years, and froth and drift of the sea, and dust of the laboring earth, and bodies of things to be, and the houses of death and birth, and wrought with weeping and laughter, and furnished with loathing and love, with life before and after, and death beneath and above, for a day and a night and a morrow, that his strength might endure for a span, with travail and heavy sorrow, the Holy Spirit of man. From the winds of the north In the south, they gathered us unto strife. They breathed upon his mouth. They filled his body with life. Eyesight and speech they wrought for the veils of the soul therein, a time for labor and thought, a time to serve and to sin. They gave him light in his ways, and love and space for delight, and beauty and length of days, and night and sleep in the night. His speech is a burning fire, with lips he travaileth, and his heart is a blind desire, and his eyes foreknowledge of death. He weaves and cloaked with tension, sows and he shall not reap. He is a watch or a vision between asleep and asleep. I think understanding, and you guys can check this out on your own. I don't want to go through all the different degrees and all of this because I would rather you do the reading on your own and take it to where you want to take it, do what you want to do with it, understand what you want to understand with it, because it's such a personal journey that we all take in spirituality itself. But this kind of takes me to, the other topic, really. Doing what thou will, I think, has been misconceived by many people, right? That misconception that's led to, trauma for others. In particular, sexual trauma, right? How do we live our fullest expression of life, right, if we do ourselves a disservice by infringing on other people's freedom and other people's liberty? It can't possibly be done, right? But yet it has been done. Many of us, you can say that a lot of our trauma has been brought on through childhood. Sometimes people have had things done to them through childhood, and some families even have that culture, according to their belief systems, what they believe, their degrees or opinions of morality, which incredibly affect people into adulthood. And they experience, very hard times being able to commit and to deal with intimacy, and have many, many deep spiritual scars as a result. Through our life, growing and evolving through adolescence, experimenting and experiencing different sexual encounters can also have traumatic imprints and scars on us as well, if you think about it. Because of pressure of peers in particular, and what we perceive to be societal norms, what is morally and dogmatically acceptable within society, to kind of persuade us from ever exploring our own individuality and kind of what suits us, right? Creates repression, forms of repression, which can then turn into all different types of ways, because when you stop an energy or repress an energy, it's going to find its way out of you, one way, shape, form, or another, in the form of a fetish, an addiction, or whatever, right? And I feel like that's one of the things, too, is also the experience of just bad relationships in general, people being harmed in general, distrust. Relying on ego. We're usually it's our egos that are wounded when we're cheated on, or, feeling betrayed or lied to or whatever, right? When truly, we shouldn't be internalizing these things from others to create these even, traumatic karmic cycles within ourselves to start with, because, it's the desire of the other person that's being expressed by their actions, not a direct reflection of you, but somehow we internalize all of this and make it a direct reflection of ourselves, creating insecurity, creating senses needs to control, lack of trust, right? Karmic cycles. We find these karmic cycles intensely repeating themselves over and over and over again. If you deal with insecurity and, a need to control, you will find yourself in situation after situation of things that appear to be out of control, right? Fighting against your intense desire to control. The universe trying to show you that you're not in control and that true love is freedom, right? And if you've even heard the saying, if you love someone, let them go. And that's what it means. It's like if someone or something belongs to you, it will be with you. No sense of controlling, no sense of domineering, and none of that will ever hold it to you or keep it to you. Matter of fact, for every action, there's a reaction. So usually the energetic expression of you trying to cling on to something is it running away or you pushing it away, right? That's just the law of dynamics and energy. The same thing goes when we try to compensate for the things that we are feeling lacking within ourselves or, insecure about within ourselves. Whether that be our bodies or our emotional state or financial state, whatever it is, usually you'll see eccentric expressions or possessions or things that we have that take precedence in our life that we use as objects of adequacy to try to compensate for the places we feel lack. Right? We got to ask ourselves why we feel the lack and the places we feel the lack that create the insecurities that we have. What were the situations we experienced that we first felt the insecurities in? And what emotion did it evoke? Because sometimes what you'll find, and it's really weird too, even with sexual trauma, that not all of the root of these traumas are indeed sexual. Sometimes people have a terrible time having relationships with men because they had a terrible relationship with their father. Sometimes people have a terrible time having a relationship with women because they have a terrible relationship with their mother. Right, or brother or sister or things like that. These familial ties, these familial relationships create this imbalance between the sexes sometimes. Sometimes it's just the dogmas of religion and society that create people, a sense of repression or the tendency to hide and obfuscate who they are. Right? If you think about, people that are gay and how, looked down that was, especially by religions for so long, people were, quote, in the closet for a long time. That's hiding who you are, hiding your true identity, and having a sense of shame whenever you express it. That creates trauma, right? And as an outlet for that, you see what? Gay pride, right? That's the inverse of that. That's the energetic expression or reaction from that action, right? People being pride, to try to make up for where they felt lack in an area, in their past or growing up. Same thing goes with toxic masculinity. Men that womanize women because they feel like it validates who they are by the amount of women that they have, and all of that has now created the opposite effect within society, within what we would perceive as like a beta male. Men overcompensating, being over feminine, or what would be considered or perceived to be over feminine, right? Each one of us are as we are, and we're meant to be the way we are, and we express who we are, how we express it, but I digress. These are all extreme results or results of these traumatic cycles that we all experience through our development, through our sexual expression. Same with the feminist movement, the oppression of women being treated as possessions, which not all, and the extreme feminism and how, you see polarity and how it'll dive to one end of the spectrum and extremes in the way that it does dive to, right? By creating almost a sense of masculinity through feminism, right? For that action is the reaction. It almost becomes counterintuitive in some ways to see a lot of the movements that result as a result of our sexual traumas on a societal level. But, as always, there's people that are trying to exploit these things as well, too, right? People are always looking to be predators to those that have been prey for most of their life, right? A lot of people, I feel, especially if you're insecure, you'll usually be taking advantage of a person that is usually more insecure than you, but overcompensates through false confidence, right? Giver and taker syndrome, where one person gives and gives and gives because they need to feel needed in their relationship, so they find themselves with a taker, someone who will continuously take. That way they always feel needed, right? Creating these imbalances. These create traumas. It isn't until we find ourselves, in my opinion, in alignment with ourselves and who we truly are, before we can even begin to truly attract the partner or the people that are in true alignment with who we are. If we're unhealed and broken, you'll hear a lot of people with the expression of like, oh, you're my other half, right? As if the two pieces make a whole. No, the two pieces are just pieces. It's like each person is whole on their own and has to be whole on their own in order to form a true union. Two complete parts to make a whole. When we're trying to fix broken pieces with broken pieces, we just get more breaking, more broken pieces, more fragments. So it's through self-love, understanding why our own psychological state and why our thoughts are the way that they are, why we think about ourselves, sex, life, all of these things, the way that we think about them, and why we see that the way that we see it, why we feel about it the way that we feel about it, understanding our cultural background, our upbringing, our religious background, the societal point of view, especially specific to our location or culture. That's created these things within ourselves. And then not to mention the different experiences in life that has given you these traumas, these auric scars, right? They're essentially scars on your soul. Heartbreak is intense, man. It's intense. Rejection, abuse, it's intense. It leaves such a deep groove in the cycle of vibration that when it comes back around, that groove is there. And a lot of times we conform to that groove, that cycle, so we begin to attract things that fit into that groove or cycle of our own orbit. Us all being stars, us all being on our own orbit, right? So the orbit that we create is by the path that we take, by the way that we act or react or choose not to react, the way that we adapt and overcome or we don't adapt and overcome. That's what creates the individual orbit of each person. And if in each orbit you've reacted in similar ways to similar situations, then you create a deeper and deeper karmic groove, attracting more and more that's going to fill that groove until you've overcome the lesson. Until you've understood why the lesson keeps returning to you. What is it that is lacking within you, or what is it that you need to see about yourself to make the necessary change? I can only give, examples of my own self. I can't ever speak for others, but I can tell you a lot of times I would be an overgiver, right? Like I would just give and give and give, and a lot of spiritual people tend to be that way. Right? Where we're used to being the one that's in touch with our spirit, our emotions, our heart, the way that we feel, our thoughts, and knowing what we want and these kind of things. Or even if we don't know what we want, we're just used to being a giver, and a lot of times it attracts that inverse polarity, the taker, you know. And you find yourself giving and giving and giving. And the more and more the person takes, the more and more you feel you have to give. And it creates that spiritual deficit, that imbalance in the relationship, which eventually creates distortion and trauma. You know? So then in the future, go ahead. What's up, brother?
No, I'm just saying, mate, spot on. You've got it down to a T. Just the way you're explaining it. I mean, I've had people in my life recently, especially just use, and they just have to be self-centered, and it's all about them. And you just you're speaking wisdom to me. It's fantastic. Thank you. Keep going. Sorry.
No, no, no. I appreciate it, man. I love it when people chime in. Um, but and that's just from my experience. And ultimately too, I reflect my own negative traits back onto my partners too, right? Like even something as like you're saying, self-centered, self-serving things. I do a lot of things in life that could be looked at as self-centered, self-serving, or have in my past, and I'll attract partners just the same that are vibrating at that frequency. They're vibrating at that polarity because that's where I'm at. That's what I'm calling in. That's what I'm telling the universe is what I want. Or the over giving thing, bringing in the taker. It's like the taker comes in over and over and over again. Or if you're finding yourself, I found myself in, so I've had so many traumas from betrayals. Like it seems like every person I call in, for a long time there, seemed to end the very same way, right? Or unavailable people. That's been another thing. I would call in unavailable people. Whether they would present themselves to be unavailable would be one thing, but they would ultimately be unavailable in some way, shape, or form, whether that was emotionally or they were in a relationship or, whatever, right? Like, so it isn't until I started learning, like, what it was in me that was making me gravitate towards emotionally unavailable people. It was because it was actually a reflection of me being emotionally unavailable. Me not wanting to commit was like the real, true, deep trauma and source in all of this. And why wasn't I wanting to commit? Because quite possibly I had some shit relationship in the past with my mom or, an ex-girlfriend or something like that where I was extremely committed to a relationship or a dynamic and it blew up in my face. So then all of a sudden I'm calling in these partners that's like, they have third party situations or, they're unavailable in some way, shape, or form. And it's really not because they're all pieces of shit and I'm just calling in pieces of shit. It's because on an energy level, on a frequency level, I'm saying like, yo, I'm not gonna commit anyway. So if you're gonna commit, I'm gonna run. And if you don't commit, I'm gonna chase. Right? So it's like that's the karmic cycle. I continued to call in for a very long time, and that's the dynamic it produced each and every time. Every time I had a good person that actually loved me, cared about me, appreciated me, sure as shit, I would run. It's like, oh, you mean you actually love me or like me? I'm gonna have to go now. you know, Thanks, but no thanks. I need to feel abused in order to feel complete. And this is I think is the hardest part, like, and especially when it comes to like healing traumas and healing shit like this. Like, you know, I myself, and I can only speak for me, and I'm not trying to air out all my dirty laundry. I'm just giving kind of broad examples. Um, but like I had a tendency, especially when I was younger, to kind of womanize a lot, and I would use people for my own kind of emotional bank. You know what I mean? It'd be like something to make me feel good about myself, or you know, uh, something to boost up my ego. And I found that that's exactly what I started calling back in on the other end. It'd be people like that wanted to do the same to me, but for a different variety of reasons. And it's like we have to understand, like, ultimately at the base, it's like, why was I doing that? Like, why was I feeling the need to use people for one specific thing? Or why was I feeling the need to use people to fill holes in my emotional construct that weren't there, at their detriment even, you know? And then why, out of like maybe a sense of guilt and shame from me doing that in the past, that I did, then I allowed it to be done to me is almost like a compensation. It's like, well, I treated people like shit, so now I'm spiritual now, so I gotta overlook everything. I gotta let people run over me now because I'm spiritual now. It's like these things, like we tell ourselves, the lies we tell about ourselves. It's like you got to even be like honest with yourself on some shit. Like, what type of person are you really, and what type of shit are you really into? I used to judge people incredibly hard too. People and their relationship dynamics, or potential partners, and the type of relationships that they would present to me. If it wasn't something that I was looking for, instead of just saying, no, thank you. That's not what I want. That's not the dynamic I'm trying to create with a partner. I would essentially rush to a judgment, or jump to a judgment against the person and say, well, because you believe this or you want this, you're not good enough to be with me. Right? You're not as moral as I am. Right? Or I'm not as moral as you are. Right? One of those things. Making those type of comparisons. And it really started to create a friction within my life to where people then would begin to misrepresent their intentions as a result of my prejudgment. So it's like, truly, we don't understand that how our behavior, our thoughts create these reflective patterns in other people. Like, there is a sense of mirroring that goes on in relationships that I think, and once you've had some real awakening going on, some real growth in your life, and you've been humbled a few good times, and all of that. And if you've ever experienced somebody that's aware of themselves as well, and you've experienced like a true sense of mirroring, or understand mirroring, or just have the ingenuity to perceive the mirroring when it's taking place, you see that ultimately in each relationship, it's really up to you on how the relationship goes. Like from start to finish, like from before said engagement or relationship, whatever encounter, right? From the attitude you have adopted and the emotions you carry from, pre-engagement, pre-relationship, right? Pre-encounter. That state that you're in then, if you're in a state of lack, desperation, a lot of people jump from relationship to relationship and they never heal from their old relationships, right? That's why you hear about rebound and all of that, right? I know a lot of people that do that. They never give themselves the time to heal. And I'm one of those people that probably gives themselves too much damn time to heal, because then I get so used to being alone that I don't want to get back in another relationship, So, I mean, there's like a balance with that as well. It's like what's good for you is good for you. What's good for me is good for me. But, so it's from like the pre-state, kind of mental state we're in, emotional state we're in, is what we begin to attract and call into ourselves. And then in the state from initial engagement, from the first hello and first date and getting to know like the type of person we project, because we always seem to want to project our best image, right? And it's not always our truest image, right? It's just the highest ideal of who we believe ourselves to be, or who we want other people to think we are, And that's another thing that I think that a lot of us don't understand, that that's a dynamic that we're creating expectations and shit when we're doing that, for one, right? Don't tell Thomas, your Susie homemaker, if you don't like to fucking cook. It's probably not a good idea. You may know Tommy wants to hear that, but if you really don't want to do that, why even put that on your plate? That way you have some later resentment, or this obligation and expectation that is created between the two of you in your relationship dynamic, because in the beginning, you came from this emotional, desperate place because you were wounded from your last relationship and you just wanted to rush and just jump into another and heal the wound instead of actually processing it and going through it and experiencing the pain, right? So you rebounded and you probably settled, presented yourself as something you weren't, or a varying idea of what you could be or maybe what you wanted to be, right? Misrepresenting yourself. And then, that creates miscommunication between you and the person you're engaging with. Then they have one idea of what should be and one idea of what, you have an idea. And that's another thing. We don't learn how to communicate what our traumas are to others. It's like a lot of people, when we're putting our best self forward, our best image forward, we don't say, hey, I have trust issues. Like that's not attractive, right? Like nobody wants to hear your fucked up issues, or at least that's what we assume. But it's like, if a person can't deal with you in your issues, is that actually the ideal person to be with? If a person doesn't accept you in your issues, is that actually kind of like a good dynamic to even, be in? If you kind of got to hide in shame, what really bothers you, or what you've been traumatized by, or what your insecurities are, your intolerances are, like, does that even set you up for success at all? It doesn't. Does that mean you have to tell every person that you date on the first date that you were sexually abused as a child, and or by your father, and so you have this animosity towards men, or this, or maybe you was an escort for X amount of years when you were younger to make money, and every man wanted you to call him daddy, so you have a complex with that, and you don't like that action in the bedroom. Like, you don't need to tell everybody the deepest, darkest recesses of your mind and about yourself on the first date, but these are the things that we never seem to want to address until the problems begin to arise, until the situations are already created. And even in sometimes when those situations are created, we still don't address them, right? Because we've already created this image of what we want the other person to think that we are, or what we believe the other person expects from us, Too many times, like in the dating pool especially, people will say, well, I want my man, my woman to have all their shit together. I want them to have, a home, a car, a career, making this much money, this much education, blah, blah, blah. I want them to have this kind of body, this kind of looks. And it's like, well, fuck, First off, what are you doing to attract that kind of caliber of a person? I always seem to find that the person that asks for perfection is nowhere fucking close to perfect, which is the weird thing. I mean, if you've got all your ducks in a row and you've got your shit together, then, you have all the right in the world to say, hey, I expect something of equal or greater value, right? That's bringing something reciprocal to the table, And based on your system of value, your system of judgment, like, and some of us judge value differently. Some people, and I can't stand it when people judge value monetarily. Like, it's like everything good will be about a person, and that'll be the one thing, that will prevent them from experiencing the person or whatever, right? They don't possess certain shit. It's like, it's just craziness, And a lot of times people that do carry those standards, the reason they do that is because of insecurities within themselves concerning those standards. Maybe they were rejected because of standards they lacked in previous experience. Or maybe they're so afraid to lose those type of things within their life that they feel if their partner doesn't have it, then they don't have that sense of security or stability with whatever it is they desire as far as physical possessions, monetary, whatever, right? Like, we have to understand what in us drives us to behave in the way that we behave pertaining to these things. What makes us feel like we can't be true to who we are with other people, ultimately. If you're a fucking swinger, you should probably step up and tell the person from the jump you're a swinger. Why would you be ashamed of those things? Why would you be afraid to be judged of those things? Encountered people that want open relationships are into just different things, different strokes for different folks. And I'm not saying it's good or bad or whatever, right? It is what it is. And what you're looking for is what you're looking for. But I've had people lie to me about those living those lifestyles or wanting those lifestyles because they were afraid of what I would say or what I would think, or it's like, well, if I won't go along with it, then I'm probably not the boyfriend for you, right? Like, if I'm not agreeing to that same lifestyle, I'm probably not the one for you. That's not going to work out, and you're probably going to be miserable with me. If I'm into monogamy and you're a swinger, then that's probably not going to be a good relationship dynamic if you're wanting to experience other experiences and the other person is wanting one energetic shared experience, right? So we got to be open and honest with ourselves and what it is that we truly desire. And, sometimes too, people have, sex addictions, that play a large role in how we operate, and how we conduct ourselves in life and what we go after and what we look for. And, I think that's another hard thing to be open and honest with people is like, it's because it's such a vulnerable thing, because sometimes sex addictions and shit like that and like little kinks and all of that can be the result of traumatic experience, right? Like, it really can. Sometimes some of our greatest fetishes are a manifestation of something truly perverse or traumatic that actually happened to us at another point in life, right? Or some very deep, dark, kind of hidden aspect of our egoic self, our carnal self. Like, you want something that's forbidden, and that's what actually attracts you to it. Or it was something that you was raised as to believe was forbidden. So, in the bedroom, that's what you want. Like, we have to be honest with ourselves on why we seek those things. Because that, I feel like a lot of times when we're not, that's what creates the unhealthy balances, and that's what creates the addictive type of personalities too. Like, if you're addicted to having new partners all the time, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Like, if that's you, that's you. But why? Why? Are you internally, sensing or seeking a sense of validation, by being, wanted by new people, or is it truly the exhilaration of the new experience each time? Like, and this is what we really got to learn to deal with, like, within ourselves, like, on what's healthy for us and what's not healthy for us, what becomes unhealthy too, like, because all things, I believe, in moderation. So if something begins to control a person, right, to where you can't maintain healthy relationships because of it, because of that desire, that, that tick, that thing you're into, then maybe it's not very good for you. If it's creating havoc in your life, are you taking the steps, first off, to be honest with yourself and why it is you want what you want, you like what you like, you're into what you're into? What experiences have created that feeling in you? Is it coming from repression or expression? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? And are you able to bring it up front and to the forefront, when you are creating new experiences, right? Is it something you hide in shame, and that's why you always attract people that aren't into that too, because it's something shameful, so you're secretly condemning yourself for this activity or this belief or this passion, this desire. Or when you do experience and meet people, is it something that you even bring out of the closet to others, and express to others in a healthy manner, and find people that are into that as well. That way you can express it in a healthy, productive manner that's going to actually bring the sense of pleasure that you're seeking in your life, and if not, what experiences have resulted out of that? How have you hurt others through that? How have you yourself been hurt as a result of that? Because these are all things that create these traumatic, cycles. Um, and I feel like, at least with myself, like, um, that's why it's so important for me, like, when I have a partner, beyond just casual things, like I want to make sure that it is somebody I can open up to and share those kind of things with, you know. And we don't a lot of times now in society take the time to actually get to know people in that way, anyways, you know. Sadly, but truly, we don't. Um, which it is what it is, or like I said, because we are afraid of judgment, um, and sometimes we don't want to stop unhealthy behavior, so we're afraid if we expose something that's unhealthy, that we'll have to quit doing it, You ever the phrase, you're not sorry that you did it or whatever, you're sorry because you got caught, that type of thing. It's like, oh, well, I can't tell you I'm cheating on you because then if I tell you I'm cheating on you, I have to stop cheating on you. I have to explain why I'm cheating on you. It's far easier for me to make you feel like the reason I'm cheating on you, that it's an inadequacy in you and project it onto you, right? Create some trauma on you and project my own trauma, my own sense of inadequacy, my own sense of needing to fulfill my ego by being a cheater. And I'm not saying I'm a cheater, I'm actually not. Um, that's one thing I don't have a problem with. But, I'm actually projecting that onto you now, and I'm transferring my trauma onto another person, and I'm expanding a karmic cycle from me to another, you know. And this is where I think, we get, the sense of familial and sexual curses and shit. You have to understand that sex energy especially is the power of creation, man. Right? Even the Egyptians understood that, with the Ankh and shit. That was an energetic expression of orgasm, releasing that intense ether of life and unking it up over the head back into the body, essentially controlling the prana within yourself, mastering that, and that euphoric feeling is life itself being released through orgasm. Right, so there's high energy in sexual exchange. Not to mention, we create astral connections, emotional ties, through sexual encounters as well. Right, so you've ever heard the saying of you haven't just slept with the person you're with, but every person they've been with and every person you've been with, and so on and so forth. And that's true. That's because we create, these astral cords, right? These connections. That's why it's a lot harder for people to move on from negative and unhealthy situations once you become sexually or emotionally involved. That's why a lot of times when you see people cheat, they emotionally cheat before they ever physically cheat, And some people are hurt far worse by the emotion than they are by the physical act, and some people vice versa. It just depends to what part of them, it's speaking to, and what part of their trauma it's actually speaking to, Profound shit. Should be paid as a psychologist counselor. Yeah, well, I still need too much psychology and counseling for all that, but I've experienced a lot of traumas and a lot of fucked up situations and scenarios and relationships in the past. And I can tell you for a fact that karmically I attracted the same type of person over and over and over, and would have the same type of experience over and over and over. And I beat my fucking head against the wall for years, literally years, trying to figure out, to the point I gave up on it. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna travel and be single and be cool and not even worry about that because I had beat my head against the wall for so long and got the same result so many times that I thought that that's all that was out there. That's the only experience essentially there was, you know. And I even began to stereotype and label every person of the opposite sex as that type of person. I mean, it become like a really negative thing within me, you know, and led me to do some really negative behavior towards the opposite sex too. That's what led me to like womanizing and shit like that. It's because like I already had this preconceived notion that every woman was a cheater, every woman was a liar, and you know, things like that. It's like, or every woman misrepresented themselves when in truth it was all projections of me at the end of the day, of my own insecurities, my own traumas and shit like that. And you know, I was the one that wasn't being, you know, true or genuine with what my needs were, what my desires were, and what I actually wanted in a relationship. I was the one that actually wasn't really willing to commit in a lot of these situations, and you know, would push it off on them, and you know, or you know, because I wasn't totally upfront and honest with a lot of the things about myself, I would find myself pushing the buttons of the other person. And this is like a weird kink, but like intentionally trying to push a person away to like just see if they loved me. It's like, okay, I'm going to be like really fucked up to you. I'm going to play mind games with you. I'm going to do all this stuff to you just to see if you'll take it. And if you take it, that means you love me. You know, like how crazy, you know, of an expression is that, you know? And like if they stayed, I actually thought it meant they loved me too. I was like, shit, she loves me. She's willing to put up with my craziness, you know? And it was just like, no, she's just broken too. You know, and she's got some type of trauma with assholes or something, or mind games, you know? It's like, and I went around for years too, projecting that shit on other people and blaming other people for the outcomes. You know, and then even throughout the process of healing, one of the things that I also suffered from a lot too was overcompensating for other people's bullshit. You know, as I got to be more honest with myself, more honest with what my trauma was, more honest with what my experience was, and in tune and in touch with what I was truly seeking, what I wanted. Like now I know what I want. You know, I know what I like. I know what I'm into. I know what I will and won't tolerate. I've had to learn how to create boundaries with people because because I didn't want to, you know, push the person away or scare the person off. I would act like I was comfortable with things I wasn't comfortable with. I'd act like I was okay with things I wasn't okay with. Or because I didn't want to look clingy or emotional, I wouldn't, or just like I wasn't, you know, cool with everything. So I was just like wouldn't express when something, you know, I didn't like, or something made me uncomfortable, or something upset me. I'd hold that shit in until I exploded eventually, right? Or just ran. You know, so I had like a million different ways that the shit would manifest in like these negative things, and I had really shit relationships like because of those things. And you know, you often wonder like, what happens when two healthy people get together? You know, I didn't even know what that looked like for the longest time. Like what that would even look like what that would feel like, what that would be like. And anytime I got into a healthy scenario or situation, I would run from it. You know, it was like, oh, that's boring. You mean we're not going to argue? You know? No makeup sex every day, every couple hours? Mistreat each other? I mean, no, I'm good. You know? No passion. Blah. Or, you mean you actually can show me affection and love me and are committed to me? No, I don't think I want you. I'd rather you know, cheat and have your attention on other people. You know, those kind of things. It's like, you know, because of different things within myself that I hadn't addressed, you know, and once I started to experience other people that had addressed those things, you know, I really started to see, like, you know, there can be true balance that's created between people if people are honest. And I think that that's the components of everything is like being honest and communicating and really doing the self, you know, the self work, right? Each one of us being willing to admit like why we are the way we are, um, how we are the way we are, like what we're into, what we like, what we want, what we desire, and being willing to answer the questions, the true questions of like why do I like that? Why am I this way? Why am I uncomfortable with that? And not condemning or condoning or anything like that, but accepting, saying it's okay. Like if I like threesomes, I like threesomes. You know what I mean? If that's what I'm into. That's what I'm into. That's okay if I'm okay with it, right? Like, but understand why. Is this coming from something unhealthy? Is this an unhealthy expression of my sexuality, or is this perfectly healthy? And this is just who I am, you know? And then being willing to be open and honest and upfront with everyone that we're dealing with on that level, about, you know, what it is we want, what it is that's happened to us that has made us the way that we are, and being able to express it in a positive, understandable way without transferring our trauma onto others too. You don't want to create a situation where like it's all that feel bad for me shit, right? Because then you can create a victim mentality too. It's like, well, everything I have is from trauma. It's like, oh, poor me. So much trauma. This is why I like this and this and this. It's like, you don't have to go all overboard with it. I mean, if you've had some really bad shit that's really hard to share, that's one thing. But like, not everything is a result of trauma. Some things are just behavioral patterns and cultural upbringings, and you know, just some things are just you. Each of us are so unique and different in our expression. We're just into so many different things on especially in that area. So it's like we have to be willing to not judge others for what they're into, and that gives us the freedom not to judge ourselves. Um, we have to be willing to be open and accepting of whatever society's got going on, instead of trying to take a stance on everything and say, I don't get down with that, or I don't get down with this. It's like, well, it doesn't matter if I'm not doing it. You know, you just had to realize you're a sexual romantic and gay. This took a long time to know. Well, that's okay. I mean, that's okay. Whatever whatever it is with you that works for you, that creates the maximum experience for you. Like, and that brings the type of love that you're truly seeking. You know, like that's what you can hang your hat on. Like, and it's okay to be who you are. And yes, there may be, and people sometimes feel like there are defining factors in their life of what even makes a person lean towards gay sometimes. Some people believe like it's certain things or they experienced as a kid. Other people believe you're just born that way. It doesn't matter. Like, it's being able to look at it, no matter what you think it stemmed from or whether you think it's natural, and being able to accept it, and love it and nurture it, and um, really be able to be bold with it and however you express it, and make sure that it's expressed in a healthy manner to where it attracts other people who express it in a healthy way too. And that's just my opinion on that. Like, and it always stems back to self-love. Anytime that we're doing anything with anything, it always stems back to self-love. Like, if we don't love and respect ourselves, we will not love and respect our partners. If we're not comfortable in our own skin, we will not be comfortable, with others and how they are. If we are judging ourselves constantly or criticizing ourselves constantly, we will do this to other people. So it's like we have to really learn to like be cool with who we are in the way we are first. And I think that takes a lot of understanding of how you get to where you're at by the experiences you've had, and really being able to like process those feelings and those thoughts and all that, and like understand what triggers you and what doesn't. It's like And that can be messy. It can be messy. And sadly to say, like a lot of people who's hurt us in our life, you can't rely on them to help you heal those wounds. Because a lot of times, if you bring a trauma back to a person who traumatized you, usually the person who traumatized you wasn't, either they weren't aware that they were traumatizing you or they don't care that they traumatized you. So either one, you're probably not going to get like a lot as far as a resolution on that. So if it's like somebody who, say, molested you or something, or whatever, date raped you, whatever, like, and it created this crazy trauma in your life, like, you're gonna have to forgive that person within your own self, like, and try to understand it the best you can, but know that you can't truly understand it because you're not them, and that you don't have to. That it's not your fault. That it's not a reflection of you in any way, shape, or form, like of why the bad things happened. Because if you go back to those people, a lot of times you'll get denial and projection and all of that, and it just makes it worse. Because then you're feeling like if they don't admit to it or apologize for it, then you can never let it go and shit like that. And that's just makes things a lot worse because that's not the case. It should never have nothing to do with the other person. That and holding on to resentment from those type of experiences. I know it's got to be very hard in some cases, but isn't going to ultimately serve your higher good in the end. That resentment is going to create, resentment to anybody who resembles that type of association, or so it's like you really got to be careful with that and like how we deal with our scars, you know. And if we want somebody to be considerate of our scars, we have to be really open and honest in telling them like what those scars are, and like how we got them, you know. And it doesn't mean hyper focus on them because then that brings so much attention to it that I think it can repeat itself that way too, you know. But it's like admitting it, understanding it, and then redirecting the energy, So you've brought light onto what was in the darkness. You've understood what was confused. And then you take that same distorted energy and you redirect it into a new positive outlet, So the, um, find something, another way to take that same type of energy and make it a different expression, right? So, say you experience some type of frustration, from lack of sex or something, in the past, and now you're overly, in your current relationship. Find a way to take the repressed energy and make it, expressed in more positive ways. Instead of always having to express it physically, start learning how to express more emotionally, intellectually, or try to learn how to express it through different varieties of love language. That way you don't create that sense of frustration or, repression within yourself, and you have different outlets that are going to actually help the relationships you're engaged in instead of hinder them because you only know one way to create an outlet for this thing, Like we have to, and that's being adaptive, right? Being able to adapt and just kind of overcome, the things that we're faced with in life. And each one of us, like we have to be willing to do that. So it took me many years to accept you're gay, you're happy, who you am, caring, giving, honest, and truthful. Well, you know what? That's that's why I say I don't judge people on what they are, gay, straight, whatever. It doesn't matter to me, like, and I feel like only the people that do those things are people that are uncomfortable with their own sexuality. Honestly, if you've ever heard somebody beat up on a person because they're gay, it's probably because they have something inside of them that they're uncomfortable about, or maybe they're truly gay and they feel a sense of shame, so they project it on the others. I've always felt like that, like, or say people that some people have like racial particularities. They're just into different races of people. Like a lot of people catch flack from the races that they're not into. It's like you have to understand, like, Each person is different, and we're attracted to different experiences. Like, I tend to be attracted to people very different from myself. Whether it's like cultural or religious background or, a variety of things. It's like, because that's what I like. I like to learn, right? So I even like to learn when I have a girlfriend. So it's like I like to learn and experience different things and unique expressions of people. And as long as a person is unique to themselves, I feel there's difference. Um, but I've caught a hard time from people before because it's like, oh, well, John, why do you always go for, this person and that person and, or whatever, It's like people are always going to criticize your ways, especially when it comes to love, and the ways that you perceive love and see love and go after love and experience love, because usually they themselves are conflicted with love too, emotions too, like, honestly. Um, well, anyone you like romantically is straight, never had a gay relationship, so it's hard to know without experience, but I do have feelings. Well, yeah, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. You're saying right there in what you're saying, um, that you're romantically going for straight people knowing that you're gay, right? Like, that's someone that is unavailable. That's an emotionally unavailable person, a sexually unavailable person in most cases. They're probably not going to experiment if they truly are straight, right? Like, so, what in you makes you feel the need to go after the unavailable ones? Like, or what are you not attracted to about the people that are? What is it that doesn't attract you to that? Like, so we like find ourselves going after the same kind of thing and something the victim mentality of like, oh, well, I'm always gonna love somebody that'll never love me back because I only love straight people and I'm gay or whatever, right? Like, instead of putting ourselves in that energy, put ourselves in a more positive, healthy energy of saying, why am I doing this to myself? Well, I'm going after these straight people, knowing they're not into the same thing I'm into. You know, do I like to be rejected? Do I like the chase? Do I like the challenge? Do I want to feel like I can convert somebody? Like, what is it that makes me want this experience so much? Or what is it that excites me about this experience? Or what is it or the characteristics of those kind of people that excites me the most? You know what I mean? Like, and then try to find a healthy way to express that or a healthy way to attract that in a way that's not going to make you feel like, woe is me, I'll never find love, or, or even, and I imagine that would even make you feel shitty about yourself, especially if you like, you're thinking you got a connection or whatever, and there is no real connection in that way. It's like that would be hard. Like, you're setting yourself up for hurt, though, like, with that. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, we do this to ourselves unconsciously, and this is how karmic cycles are created. And you will find yourself repeating that shit over and over and over again. So, whether it's, me going after lesbians because I want to convert them all into straight, or, you going after straight or whatever, like, it doesn't matter. The point is, like, if we don't understand why we're doing what we're doing and what it is about what we're doing that we're attracted to, then we can't understand the solution to, what it is that's happening in our life in order to correct